There's a lesson plan in the it's in the lesson stream membership, and it's all about story dice. I don't know what do you think of story dice. If you're aware of story dice, the idea is you throw the dice, and you've got to create a story according to the icons that you get: a pair of pliers, dinner time, a pizza, a robot, a credit card, sticking plasters, an ice cream, headphones, and a bus. This image that you see comes from Dave Burse's website. They're quite good story dice. I've always had a love-hate relationship with story dice. The reason I love them, as many teachers do, they're quite fun. You know, it's great to get students to throw the dice, just get on with it. They're usually quite engaging, and you can take a back seat. The reason I hate them is because I think they're very bad. They're not actually a very good stimulus for creating stories. The stories that you get back are usually pretty poor, you know. And so I tried this on ChatGPT earlier. Let's see if I can show you. Can you write a story that involves the items below? That was the display that you just seen, the story dice that you just seen. You can write them in any order. So that was the stimulus. And you might think that the answer I get: once upon a time, there was a robot named Rob who loved pizza. Every dinner time, he would order a large pepperoni pizza and enjoy it while listening to music on his headphones. One day, while chomping on a delicious slice, Rob realized he had left his credit card at home. He didn't have any cash on him either, and the pizza delivery person was waiting for payment. It's a bit strange that Rob the robot is actually already eating the pizza before he's paid the delivery man. But let's keep going on. In a moment of panic, Rob remembered he had a pair of pliers in his toolbox. He quickly grabbed them and used them to open the coin compartment of his bus fare machine. This is just nonsense, but I do quite like it. I mean, he's a robot. Who's to say what he's going to have at home? Rob was able to collect enough coins to pay for the pizza, and the delivery person was satisfied. But as he reached for another slice of pizza, he noticed a small cut on his finger. Robots with cuts on their fingers. He didn't have a Band-Aid on him, but he did have an ice cream in the freezer. He used a bit of the ice cream to clean the cut and then applied it as a makeshift bandage. It worked like a charm, and Rob enjoyed the rest of his dinner in peace. From then on, Rob always made sure to have his credit card and a Band-Aid on him just in case. He also started keeping a spare pair of pliers in his toolbox just in case he needed to use them again. Now, you might be thinking this is a very weak story, but it's probably as good as many other stories I've seen written through story dice, because I think story dice, they force you to cram in all 9 ideas, 9 images that you get, and that really does not lend itself to good storytelling. The stories that come out of it, they're kind of they're pointless. They're contrived. They lack what could you call it? Causality. You know, there's no cause and an effect. They lack direction. As I said, they're more concerned with squeezing all these ideas in. So I've asked GPT, still don't got it. Do you know what a premise is? Do you know what a conflict is? And yes, I know what a premise is. A premise is a statement or idea that forms the foundation or starting point for a work of literature, film, or other art. It's often a brief summary of the main idea or central conflict of the story. A conflict is a struggle or opposition between characters, forces, or emotions that drives the action and creates tension in the story. So conflicts can take many forms: internal conflicts within a character, conflicts between characters, etc., etc. Can you identify a conflict or premise in your story? And he says, when the story I told, the conflict is that the robot named Rob realized that he left his credit card at home, which is fair enough. That is maybe the central conflict in the story. But I'm not really satisfied by that, because I think it's a bit weak. So I've asked, can you combine any 2 of the following to find a premise or a conflict? And I've given them the same 9 images. I've given an example, for example, a story about a robot that wants to go shopping but can't pick up the credit card because of his clumsy robot hands. And in the story, he has to find a way to solve this problem. So the possible conflict that GPT comes out with a story about a robot who's determined to make a perfect pizza for dinner using the pair of pliers as a kitchen tool, but struggles to do so due to a malfunctioning in its program. Still kind of nonsense, isn't it? Um, and probably reassuringly, because it still can't create a good story. You seem to like stories about robots who like pizzas. As a language model, I do not have personal preferences or likes, but I can see why you would think that. Pizza and robots are both common elements in stories and can be used in many different ways to create interesting conflicts and premises. I can generate stories about many different topics with different characters. I'm surprised because robots can't eat pizzas. Can you imagine what would happen if a robot tried to eat a pizza? You are correct that robots, as they are currently designed, do not have the physical ability to eat. They are not biological entities and do not have mouths or digestive systems. However, in fiction and in the context of a story, it is possible to imagine robots that have been designed to be able to eat or simulate the act of eating. In this context, if a robot tried to eat a pizza, it would probably involve some kind of mechanism for breaking down the pizza and processing it, likely in a way that is different from how a human would do it. The robot would also have to have some way to simulate the experience of taste, as it wouldn't have taste buds. It is important to note that in any story, the premise is not necessarily based on reality, but on the imagination. That's quite clever. And that's a lovely argument, I think, to come out with in response to my criticism that robots don't eat pizza. So I've given it some credit. Good point. However, I think that you could write a story with the following conflict. A robot loves the idea of eating on pizza. Unfortunately, he's not designed for it. He has to find a way to solve the problem. So here's a program about a robot that likes the idea of eating pizza. Once upon a time, there's a robot named Rob. Always been fascinated by the idea of eating pizza. As he watched humans enjoying slices of the delicious food, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy. But as Rob was not designed for eating, he couldn't taste the pizza or even ingest it. Determined to experience the joy of eating, he set out to find a solution to his problem. He scoured the internet, read books, and consulted other robots, but to no avail. One day, while on a bus, he noticed a pair of pliers, and an idea struck him. He decided to use the pliers to create an improvised mouth to ingest the pizza. He quickly put his plan into action, and to his delight, he was finally able to eat the pizza. However, the pizza caused an internal malfunction, and the robot needed to use a band-aid to cover the wound. He realized the idea of eating was different from reality. From then on, Rob contented himself with the idea of eating and enjoyed watching humans eating pizza instead. I think that's a much better story, don't you? You know, in the lesson plan I mentioned, this is very much the central idea that it's no good just asking students to throw the story dice and write a story. You're only going to get bad stories back from that, and not just bad, but terrible stories. And it's not the student's fault. It's the nature of the task. And I think it's much better to focus on just one or two of the dice. Look at the 9 combinations, get metaphorical. You know, a slice of pizza doesn't have to represent a slice of pizza. It could represent food in general. It could represent Italy. The robot could represent ChatGPT. It could represent technology, you know, and look for connections between the 9 dice. Find a connection, find a conflict, create a premise. And that's what this lesson plan really is all about in lesson stream membership. John, you've used story cubes and emphasized the necessity of picture association rather than using pictures literally. This has been successful to a degree. Yeah, it's essential. I think it provides the perfect example of the trap that teachers can fall into, thinking it's just let students get on with it. I take a back seat, zero interference, they come up with stories. That's a lovely idea. The more students can be autonomous and get on with it, the better. But it always requires a little bit of input just to keep them on the right path, to question, to draw their attention to what could be better, a conflict, a premise. You know, this is a bad story because it lacks cause and effect. It's contrived. What about this? I think that's what we demonstrated here.